Look, saying that MrBeast is the biggest creator on earth is so obvious that it's patronizing, right? He's the most subscribed to channel on YouTube, and if you were to pick a random platform, he's probably one of their biggest names too. But what's even more impressive about Jimmy is his image. I mean, quite famously, creators who have been at the top of YouTube tend to be pretty disliked. Sometimes it's for being annoying, hey, it's Fred! While other times it's for that creator having some controversial moments.
And to make it perfectly clear, no, I'm not racist.
I said the worst word I could possibly think of, and it just sort of slipped out.
But Jimmy's one of the few people to sit at the top that everyone just seems to like. I mean, if you ever made the mistake of going onto Twitter, you would certainly find no shortage of threads criticizing him, but almost every single one ends up being ratioed by someone expressing support.
Okay, I agree, that's a bad system, but how is that his fault? Because he's contributing it by being rich in the first place? Yeah, and he's using his money in the best way possible. I really don't know what you want.
And if you're only reading headlines, I mean, the man cures the blind and brings water to Africa. You could start a religion about him. And honestly, Jimmy was the closest that a YouTuber ever came to feeling truly untouchable to me. But over the last few months, that image has suddenly shattered, with Jimmy, and those around him, facing a pile of controversies so large that simply ignoring them is no longer an option. From his best friend having some not super appropriate feelings towards minors.
There are tons of screenshots to showcase exactly what was being said to someone who was between 13 and 14 years old at the time, and it's fucking gross. It's completely unacceptable.
And Jimmy himself being accused of, well,
that's a war crime. We're not allowed to do that to terrorists. 24 hours breaking the Geneva Convention, I guess.
I mean, without exaggeration, this could be the single greatest downfall of a YouTuber ever. Though in order to understand how this could be the end of the MrBeast brand as we know it, it's worth mentioning how it came to be. But first, I gotta thank today's sponsor, Aura. Recently, over 2.9 billion records were stolen from National Public Data, which is supposed to offer personal information to those running background checks like employers. These stolen records include a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternate names and birth date, and members of the hacker group have reportedly released this information for free online. But that's not the only reason to be concerned about your cybersecurity. I mean, personally, I've been getting phishing emails from people pretending to represent major companies wanting to collaborate. You see, they send over a program they say contains the contract, only running said program would potentially hijack my computer or even my YouTube channel. It's definitely a scary time in the world of cybersecurity, and that's where Aura comes in. Aura alerts you if they find your phone number, email, or social security number on the dark web, or if anyone tries to use this information to access credit or banking accounts. They also provide up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. Not to mention a bunch of other features that keep you safe, all inside of one app. Sign up today at aura.com/JimmyRobbins for a 14-day free trial, which is more than enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. With how massive these recent leaks have been, there's really nothing to lose by being prepared. Thanks to Aura for helping keep the lights on, now back to the video. You see, while many people label becoming a YouTuber as a feat of pure luck, MrBeast is perhaps the single greatest example of someone making it thanks to sheer willpower. At first, Jimmy focused on making gaming Let's Play videos.
Back off. Get away.
Though as time went on, this started to include him doing analyses on the earnings for certain gaming YouTubers.
Every million views you get on YouTube, if you're using ads, you're gonna generate at least $1,000+ in income, which is pretty cool. It really shows the power of internet advertising and how awesome YouTube is.
As well as think pieces on the state of YouTube as a platform.
You're screwing up the comment sections, you're screwing up everything we love about YouTube with Google+. Just stop, YouTube.
And in two key ways, this was the start of the Jimmy we would know. One, he was incredibly tenacious. Like, it took him over a year and a half just to hit 50,000 views, like total, across his whole channel.
But I'm really happy I hit 50,000 video views. I never thought I'd get that many.
But two, Jimmy loves YouTube. Like, not the culture or the creators or the videos, but just YouTube.
Spent 10 years of my life just hyper obsessing over all this. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the amount of YouTube videos I watch in my life is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, and the amount of videos I've broken down frame by frame is in the thousands over my life.
So even as a teenager, Jimmy was doing his best to break down YouTube and how it works under the hood, a skill that he would later be famous for. And as we've seen from MatPat and, well, Jimmy, being an analytically inclined person with a passion for YouTube, both the creative and business sides, is almost a recipe for guaranteed success, or at least when paired with being crazy enough to bet everything on making it work. And yeah, Jimmy was more than that crazy.
My mom was just like, either you go to college or you move out. So I go to college, it's community college. It's not that expensive, whatever. After 2 weeks, literally just 2 weeks, I just stopped going. But I didn't have enough money to move out. I wasn't making anything. So I just didn't tell my mom. And then I would act like I was going to college, and then I would like just sit in my car in the college campus and just work on videos or edit or just work on a script or something. And then I'd come home and I'd be like, hey mom, college is great.
And so as Jimmy kept grinding out videos and studying YouTube, his content was slowly transforming until he arrived at the genre of excess. See, YouTube was starting to see a rise in videos that were all about doing the most of something.
Today I'm gonna see what happens if I fill my whole bathtub with 30 packs of these water beads.
Oftentimes, this would be buying the most expensive blank.
My airplane seat has 3 rooms. This back here, that's my bedroom.
But we're talking about some teenagers, so money's out of the question. So instead, Jimmy started pushing the limits of his time.
What's up, guys? I'm gonna be watching It's Every Day, Bro for 10 hours straight. That didn't feel like it was ever gonna end. That was painful. That was miserable.
And once money did start going into his pockets, he was crazy enough to put every penny right back into the channel.
I was offered $5,000 for a video. But this was when I was like 19. And it was so much money. It's like, mom, look. And I was like, double it. And I'll walk outside and I'll give it to a homeless person. And they're like, no, you won't. And I was like, double it. And I like pacing around my neighborhood for 3 hours convincing this guy, like on the phone, just double the money. I promise the video will go viral and I'll give it to homeless person. I was like, $10,000 just looks better in a title. It'll get more views. I promise your app will do better.
And by all means, this is when MrBeast really came to be, with him committing to not waste a second of his time.
I just sat there for an hour and I was like, what can I do to make money while I watch this anime for fucking 60 hours? And then I practiced counting. And I realized I could count while still enjoying the show. And so the entire time I counted to 100,000, I was just watching anime. So I basically made money while watching anime.
And sure enough, this was the start of Jimmy experiencing rapid growth. I mean, while it took him 4 years to reach 100,000 subscribers, just 2 years later, he was at 10 million. And as Jimmy got bigger and bigger, he kept raising the bar for his content higher and higher.
Last to leave this roller coaster, car, toilet, bit of money, house wins 20,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Last to remove your hand off this $1 million keeps it.
I mean, taking him at his word, short-term profits weren't a concern, so he dedicated his life to being the best at, well, YouTube, living the exact kind of lifestyle that YouTubers would take great measures to avoid.
So yeah, this is my little apartment. This is where I live for the most part.
So you actually sleep in your office?
Of course. I just work every day, every hour of the day, until I just burn out. And then I'll take like half a day or maybe a day, depending on how severe it is, and I'll just chill. And I'll just kind of like nuke my calendar. And then by the next day, I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. And then I just do it again.
Now, as time went on, some key parts of his brand were established. One, he's just a guy living his dream, trying to share the good fortune with his friends and the rest of the world.
We are building 2 separate wells that will each produce 10,000 liters of water per day.
These wells are going to serve between 9,000 and 12,000 people, which means that each person is going to get at least 2 liters of clean drinking water a day.
And 2, he exists outside of controversy, meaning he'll associate with almost anyone provided they're interesting enough to make for good content. Logan Paul exposed for scamming his viewers out of millions of dollars, Jimmy gives him the perfect guest spots to work on his comeback campaign.
Will it make you feel better if I let you promote Prime on your way out?
Even giving Logan the opportunity to misleadingly discredit the YouTubers who have thus far held him accountable.
Also, I got to like squash a few beefs.
You did?
Yeah, like bro, him, Moist Critical, Matt Pat, they've all like made like a series of videos like talking mad, like they're on that wave.
To be clear, I wasn't talking shit. He had done a scam with CryptoZoo and had like put people out, I think the equivalent of almost 2 million USD. But I do think it's because it didn't happen at the time of this filming, but after that he's suing CoffeeZilla.
Since then, he is now apparently suing CoffeeZilla. Either Logan or someone on his team is suing CoffeeZilla, which is a massive fucking L. That is brain dead activity for sure. But when this was filmed, that wasn't happening.
Joe Rogan tells young people not to get vaccinated during a global pandemic and becomes famous for habitual misinformation. Well, Jimmy's a repeat guest, helping to bring more young eyes to the podcast. And because Jimmy would never comment on anything divisive, any criticism of this would receive a harsh response. Saying something like, "Jimmy's just not picking a side. Why do you have to make every piece of media some morality test, you neckbeard?" I'm not speaking from experience, why do you ask? But this commitment to being a neutral yet positive addition to the platform eventually led to Jimmy being at the very center of YouTube. I mean, as strange as it sounds, creators were getting desperate for a central creator that the community could rally behind. Because as YouTube was heading into the late 2010s, it seemed that YouTubers would only receive media attention due to horrid behavior. Whereas Jimmy seemed like someone who not only actively wanted the responsibility of representing YouTube, but seemed to understand how important this was.
Some inflammatory articles are posted about how major brands are being advertised on top of very vile YouTube videos. A bunch of advertisers fearing backlash removed their ads entirely from YouTube, and during this period, every YouTuber saw a decrease in revenue.
So thanks to all of these factors, Jimmy became kind of bulletproof by the 2020s. Like I said, any criticism of him would be quickly and passionately refuted by thousands, and on the rare occasion that Jimmy would acknowledge his critics, it would be in very candid ways where the stakes were clearly quite low. Yet in just the last few months, Jimmy is now partnering with agencies to investigate misconduct within his company. There are reports of him hiring the same lawyers as Harvey Weinstein, and he's sending out cease and desist letters to company whistleblowers. So what the hell happened? Well, it all involves his employees, his lifelong best friend, and a hotly contested game of hide and seek. And yes, I wish I was joking about that last part, but let's start with the story of Ava Kris Tyson. As I had mentioned, a large part of Jimmy's brand was him trying to share the spoils of his career with those closest to him. So what started with Jimmy would eventually become an ensemble of guys who would either accompany Jimmy on his various adventures or compete for prizes that would only get better. And one of the first members of this troupe was Jimmy's best friend, Chris. And that group expanded pretty organically.
It was just me and Chris at the start, and then Chandler was our janitor, and Chris and Chandler just occasionally hung out. I was like, okay, well, Chandler's his friend, so we put Chandler in a video. And the fans loved him. Now it's me, Chris, and Chandler. And then Carl was one of our editors. Chris and him just became inseparable. And then Nolan's just been a friend of mine for like 5 years.
And as they found their footing, this cast of friends was, simply put, uncontroversial. It was next to impossible to give reasons to dislike any of them without it coming down to personal preference. And even as Jimmy started to reach beyond this troupe for on-camera talent, they maintained a strong presence in his brand, either acting as wild cards in low-stakes challenges or test subjects in the more risky ones. Though over the course of 2022, things started changing for the one labeled MrBeast sidekick. See, people started observing differences in Chris's appearance, namely that they were dressing in a way quite unlike their typically masculine redneck style. Eventually, Kris confirmed that she was engaging in hormone replacement therapy, later confirming that she was transgender, preferred feminine pronouns, and would go by the name Ava, though the feminine form of Kris would still be an acceptable way to refer to them.
I was Chris with a CH, and then I put that to rest, and now I can finally be Chris with a K.
Kris would also confirm that they were separated from their wife, but would still take an active role in raising their son. And of course, everyone responded to this by being totally supportive, completely normal, and you already know I'm lying to you, so why even pretend, right? Yeah, to the surprise of no one, this turned into a swarm of controversy, with people attacking Kris for being transgender while visible to kids, labeling her presence in the MrBeast brand as a form of grooming, which led to people calling for Kris to depart from Jimmy's company in order to protect him.
The only clean solution should things go south might be for Kris to resign himself, and even then rumors and bad press will be unavoidable. Whether it be arrogance or ignorance, Kris seems oblivious to how this whole thing might impact Jimmy, forgetting that he achieved his current level of success by avoiding this exact type of drama.
And let me tell you, people went to bat for her. Countless creators expressed their support for her in the face of this transphobia.
The weird thing is that Kris is trans! Hey guys, it's not enough that I put in this scary music about Chris's fucking transition, right? But I need you to fucking know, Jimmy doesn't like it!
He's not double down. He's finding himself and his true identity.
Hell, even I did, because it was the right thing to do. And Jimmy himself broke his famously centrist streak and came out in strong support of Kris. Though at this point, Chris's appearances on the channel began to dwindle so that she could spend more time with her son. But Jimmy's friend being trans and him being very supportive...
Jimmy sees you dressed up as a woman.
Yes.
And
he goes, we can talk about this if you want. And I was like, no. And we didn't.
Did you turn around and go into your room?
I did. And we didn't talk about it.
You had the support from your core group.
Yeah. They're really like my family.
That doesn't seem like it would be the start of some PR nightmare, does it? Well, that's not where things ended for Kris. See, in true YouTuber fashion, part of Ava's past was recently resurfaced, though rather than the edgy jokes or use of slurs that are typically uncovered, it was something that couldn't be waved away with the "it was a different time" excuse. See, it came out that Ava had previously supported an artist known for creating sexual artwork of children, both real and fictional, with this even extending to Ava buying a piece of this artwork and displaying it in her home. So right away, it's kinda weird, right? Cause like, why the hell would you support that kind of content at all, let alone financially, let alone publicly, right? And while it's already a pretty bad start, there are a few points that magnified the scope of this to being a PR nightmare for Jimmy. One, I'm not done going over Ava's accusations, including minors, and two, transgender people are often stereotyped as being attracted to and even preying on children. So for this to come out about Ava of all people was bad. She was arguably the most famous person to come out as trans in the last couple of years and received very passionate support both from the queer community and its allies. So for millions to decry the claim that Ava is preying on children, only for that exact kind of behavior to be revealed later, had really bad implications for the trans community. Because not only could this discourage allies from speaking out against transphobia, but this could now be used as confirmation of the aforementioned stereotypes. I mean, a lot of people have taken these claims as justification to engage in incredibly transphobic remarks, or as retroactive justification for the disgusting things that happened when Ava came out. So all of that combined made this a much larger story. And then the next accusations dropped. The main one being that Ava was talking inappropriately to a teenager when Ava was 20 and said teen was 13. And while no explicit photos or contact took place, Ava engaged in jokes that most adults would generally avoid making with teens, especially ones they met online. This friendship eventually led to the teen, Lava, working for MrBeast for a year, and it wasn't long before people were accusing Ava of textbook grooming. Now, while Lava has insisted that this was not the case and initially came out in defense of Ava, they eventually said that while they still draw the line short of grooming, the behavior was incredibly inappropriate looking back. Ava was also found making similarly inappropriate jokes and remarks in broader discords with other teens.
Under no circumstances should an adult be communicating with a child in any inappropriate manner whatsoever. Edgy jokes between an adult and a child are still f***ing gross. That's not like the slam dunk defense that some people seem to think it is. Under no circumstances should an adult be in a group chat with a bunch of children sending for America pictures. Like, that's still bad. That's still horrible. That's still really fucking weird.
Now, it's worth noting that when a public figure is accused of misconduct, it often leads to a sudden outpour of other accusers coming forward. And while sometimes this is because of people feeling like they can finally share their story safely, it does often include bad faith actors muddying the water. This is especially true in a situation involving a transgender individual associated with the largest YouTube channel in the world. That's the kind of situation where you get someone literally saying, yes, I may have lied about Ava before, but that doesn't mean I'm not telling the truth now. So while it's worth saying that yes, several other accusers came forward about Ava, including a now deleted Twitter account alleging SA, I'm generally going to stick to accusations with the most tangible evidence, if not outright confirmation, or at the very least come from a source that is verified. Anyway, with all the controversy this created, Jimmy came out and staunchly disavowed these events, claiming that he did not know about this previously, would be hiring investigators to help guide his next steps, and that Ava would no longer be a part of the company going forward. Now, it's worth noting that amidst the controversy, a former MrBeast employee, Jake the Viking, came out and tried to link Ava's actions to Jimmy, insisting that Jimmy not only knew, but possibly protected Ava and even enabled their behavior, with Jake going on to air his own grievances with being fired from the company. However, much of this behavior has been dismissed as the actions of a scorned ex-employee wanting revenge more than actually caring about any potential harm done, such as co-signing transphobic remarks that, let's face it, some weirdos are just dying for an excuse to make. You also have the fact that Jake's claims about Jimmy ended up implicating Jake, because how would Jake know that Jimmy was complicit in Ava's behavior unless Jake also knew about it but chose to remain silent? It also came out that Jake's brother-in-law, a fellow MrBeast alumni referred to as Delaware,
yes. I need everyone's phones,
had previously been charged with inappropriate contact with a young child, to the point that Jake had befriended a 17-year-old who had met Delaware several times through Jake. Though I will note that this individual has consistently defended Jake and, as of recording, has not made any claims about Delaware being inappropriate. But either way, Delaware is kind of a weird person for Jake to associate with if his actions stem from passion towards protecting kids rather than good old-fashioned revenge. I obviously cannot speak to their intentions, but it was worth touching upon. Anyway, the next domino in this escalating PR demolition started with, well, hide and seek. That wasn't a joke. See, Rosanna Pansino is a huge legacy creator best known for her videos on baking, and in October of 2023, she came out with her own accusations against MrBeast himself. Accusations involving the high stakes and traumatic world of hide and seek. Okay, that was the last one, I'll get serious now. Rosanna came out and shared that when competing in a MrBeast hide and seek challenge, the video was edited so that the final 3 contestants were altered. This resulted in her appearing to place 4th in the competition rather than 3rd. And according to Rosanna, the winner of that competition should have actually been eliminated for breaking the rules they were given, but Jimmy decided to let it slide because it made for better content.
The other thing that they said is absolutely no climbing in the air vents or the ceiling. If it was held accountable, especially because this was a YouTube original production, Zach would have been eliminated for cheating. He broke the rules, and guarantee you, if I climbed in the ceiling, Mr. Beast would eliminate me.
Now, while I was being a bit sarcastic a moment ago, I will say that, yeah, this is a completely fair and valid criticism from Rosanna. Much of Jimmy's brand is founded in his videos being authentic and real, so trying to find the line between authenticity and story, it's a debate we've been having for decades with all kinds of reality programming. The problem is, many people, including myself, were critical of how Rosanna went about this. Like running to make it a public spectacle when, ultimately, the harm was minimal. I mean, it took a while for her to bring up the potential issues with where the prize money went, so it felt trivial. Like, why not start with trying to address the concerns with Jimmy directly? She also used language that was quite dramatic considering the scenario, like saying, "I gave it my all, had fun, and never gave up. They can't take that away from me." We're saying that this caused her mental anguish and that getting third place was a needed boost to her confidence, and even using language comparable to someone coming out with their experience being essayed. Once again, this is a famous multi-millionaire talking about hide and seek. She also leaked DMs with MrBeast where he expresses a desire to discuss this issue over the phone. Problem is, this was her criticizing his concern for written communication being leaked by justifying those fears and leaking their written communication. So between this and putting hide and seek champion in her bio and releasing a music video amidst the attention, and all of these actions stemmed from her being shown as placing 4th when she really placed 3rd, it really hurt her credibility to many and just seemed weird more than anything else. And upon a closer look, her claims are almost just straight up wrong. Like, the specific grievance that she aired about her placement was addressed in the video, which is that another competitor had not moved when instructed to because he had fallen asleep, so he was disqualified.
And because Lorray was outside the playing field, we unfortunately had to disqualify him.
However, he was found after Rosanna, even according to her, so the video showed it in chronological order but made it clear that he had been disqualified. So it's already quite clear that she placed 3rd despite being the 4th last to be found, because that's how it happened. So I don't really get that complaint when seemingly no prize was given based on this discrepancy. The real deception is that, according to her, the video was altered to make Quackity appear to do worse in favor of making Logan Paul look better. And according to Rosanna, had the rules been enforced, Quackity should have won, meaning he was cheated out of $1 million for his community, which is an incredibly serious accusation. But even that is just not correct. The winner, Zach King, did not climb in the ceiling or the air duct. There was a ledge on top of a wall and he climbed onto that. While you can feel like it went against the spirit of the rule, it doesn't actually break it, nor is it anywhere near enough to insinuate that MrBeast rigs the winners of his competitions. So the issue is that Jimmy showed favoritism to Logan Paul at Quackity's expense, yet Rosanna gave several monologues about the injustice she faced for some reason. But either way, in the face of the initial criticisms of her approach, she apologized to MrBeast, but then immediately retracted that apology. Again, just weird. But I'm covering all of this because it's still incredibly relevant. See, regardless of what our intentions might be, once again I'm not a mind reader, Rosanna has become a prominent figure in the movement to expose Jimmy, mostly revolving around the production of his show with Amazon, because Jimmy is taking the ideas of his YouTube content and is adapting them to the television format. But as filming goes on, more and more claims of incompetence, abuse, and all-around creepy behavior is coming to light. So Rosanna is largely echoing different entities that are trying to bring this to light. Additionally, she seems to be running her own investigation and is encouraging people to contact her in order to give their stories.
I'd like to read you 2 statements from Beast Game contestants who witnessed the same and, in my opinion, a horrifying event. I've actually received more than 5 statements about this exact situation.
So some of her claims are very, very dramatic and severe, but without any source or evidence, even when she claims to have some. For example, she's claimed that Jimmy's hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on his critics as well as slander and harass them. And multiple other whistleblowers have echoed this claim, but without proof beyond "a friend told me so."
And I had a good friend who told me that, hey man, all the PIs in Greenville are working for this company right now. And so, he didn't know any of that. He didn't know any of that. He just told me as a friend, and that should double confirm both of these instances.
And Rosanna in particular even says that she's keeping all of the receipts, but you really only have their words for this accusation of crime syndicate level behavior. She also alleges that Jimmy has hired a crisis management PR team known for representing politicians and Hollywood figures, including Harvey Weinstein, with her even speculating that this team is strategically leaking confidential materials that make Jimmy look good. And while this has led to a lot of headlines circulating, as of recording there is nothing to support these claims. But let's hone in on the literal MrBeast show. The Hollywood Reporter and the New York Times have reported that over a dozen participants of the show came out with claims that while shooting, there were numerous injuries on set, resulting in some being removed from the competition arena on stretchers. The participants were also allegedly not provided with adequate food, water, or medical care, though a representative of MrBeast has refuted the claim about food, saying that contestants were given 3 daily meals that accommodated individual needs. Now, it's worth noting that the contestants were allegedly allowed to leave at any time, but of course that sparks the debate of if that means anything when you're waving $5 million in front of people who might be desperate for that money. Anyway, according to the New York Times, there was also some weirdness involving underwear.
Contestants were instructed to supply the production staff with a Ziploc bag containing 5 days worth of undergarments, which would be distributed to the contestants once the games were underway. But several contestants said that they had waited hours or even days to receive their clean underwear.
And according to Rosanna, one contestant was still not given any of their undergarments back as of August 5th. Rosanna also claims that a similar degree of recklessness was applied to medications. Lastly, one of the contestants is apparently a felon convicted of several violent crimes that you generally would not want on a set, especially not for a production that will be widely watched by kids. And while a common defense of this has been that this is due to Amazon's mismanagement, according to Rosanna, Jimmy himself has full control, thus implying that the responsibility for these issues are his to bear.
Let's just say Amazon will give us the most creative control. And by most, I mean all creative control, and they'll let me do whatever I want.
Again, when I say according to Rosanna, it's up to you how much credibility to place there. However, if she was found to be lying, it could completely ruin her business that basically prints money. So if she was gonna pull an Illuminati and pick a fight of this size by grasping at straws, I feel like that probably would have happened years ago, but anyway. As time goes on, more and more stories just keep coming out about the fiasco of this production. For starters, someone was seriously injured when a concrete tower partially collapsed on them. Additionally, lawsuits are now being brought against both MrBeast and Amazon.
He is now not only getting sued, he is in the crosshairs of a class action lawsuit. And not just him, Amazon and other production companies affiliated with the Beast Games competition series. So right now, a lot of the details are still unknown. But a key thing is that some of the claims include complaints about safety, not having enough food, chronic mistreatment, and sexual harassment. Then regarding the more general forms of mistreatment, the lawsuit said that the contestants were exposed to dangerous conditions and that, quote, as local news reported, many contestants found it was the poor set conditions rather than the challenges themselves that proved to be the main difficulty.
Now, so far we've covered actions from Jimmy's close friends, but his personal involvement in them are pretty unsubstantiated. And now there's his television show, but maybe these issues stem from incompetence. And I don't even mean that as an insult. I mean, this is new territory for Jimmy, so maybe he thought he could handle the larger scope of this production, but was wrong. I mean, in that case, that sounds more like a speed bump from a PR perspective than the crisis I promised you. Certainly, it's not enough for the villainous branding being applied to Jimmy. You already know where I'm going with this, don't you? In recent weeks, more and more has come out involving how MrBeast manages the production of his YouTube content. For starters, a document was leaked that allegedly acted as the orientation for MrBeast hires, and the document stood out to many as showcasing MrBeast fostering a culture that focuses on profit over employee well-being.
Specifically on page 19, there's a paragraph called "No does not mean no." Already insane, because it seems to be co-opting the popular anti-rape slogan, which is a terrible look given the allegations that are going to be coming out very soon.
This included saying that average employees can be defined as ones who aren't obsessed with their jobs, and that such employees are poisonous and should be removed from the company immediately. He also said that losing sleep was an expectation for working at MrBeast, saying, pull all-nighters weeks before the shoot so you don't have to days before the shoot. And like, yeah, I personally pull way too many all-nighters making YouTube videos, but I'm the one who owns my company. If anyone should make that sacrifice, it's the one who directly profits from it. Like, I would never have an employee lose sleep and say, oh, that's just part of the job. Like, that's insane to me when you directly have the power to prevent that. He also encourages micromanagement, saying, I want less excuses in this company. Take ownership and don't give your project a chance to fail. Dumping your bottleneck on someone and then just walking away until it's done is lazy and it gives room for error. And I want you to have a mindset that God himself couldn't stop you from making this video on time. Check in daily. Leave no room for error. There are also excerpts in the script like, "I'd rather you be honest with each other than nice to each other," which, as someone who has both management and production experience, yeah, that's the kind of thing that I might say, but when talking about employees being candid with me, I would never say that on behalf of other employees while somehow implying that tact and efficiency are mutually exclusive. It just seems like you're setting yourself up to have a weird company culture. I don't know. Now, it's worth noting that this packet has been confirmed as true by several of the whistleblowers of this situation.
A very concerning document was sent to me who says that this is an internal employee manual written by MrBeast Jimmy himself. I confirmed the legitimacy of this document with 2 former MrBeast employees.
And overall, its contents are curious, yes, but it's hard to know what to do with this alone. I mean, in theory, MrBeast is the best in the world at what he does, so you would expect a demanding workflow that requires the best, right? So maybe he just comes across poorly in writing, meaning we would have to know more about his day-to-day leadership in order to form a judgment, right? Well, more recently, an ex-employee of MrBeast's, Trey Yates, was actually interviewed by The Asher Show about his time at the company. And this is especially significant because Trey is one of the few employees to confirm various accusations that were otherwise made anonymously. See, Trey worked at the company for 3 years, working his way up in the company's post-production department.
I started off with me editing for Beast Reacts in 2018. From March of 2020 to October of 2021. During that time, I was post-production manager. I was also production manager. I was also an editor, and I was also a retention specialist. Like, wow. I had 4 full-time jobs wearing all these hats all at the same time.
As it relates to the leaked handbook, Trey shares that while this document was likely published after he left the company, he does believe it's real because of how well it matches his experiences.
That document was accurate?
Yes, it was accurate to how things go in the company.
More specifically, he was experiencing Jimmy's expectation that he would lose sleep daily.
I would go to bed at 3 or 4 a.m. and then get up at like 9:30 the next day just so I could drive back to the studio and then work on production stuff.
Wow.
Every single day from 2020 to 2021. But it speaks to the culture of the MrBeast company that's the way it is.
Not to mention work any holiday you could name.
Like, I worked Thanksgiving, Christmas, my 30th birthday, 4th of July, New Year's, like every single holiday you can think of.
And Trey speaks towards how indifferent Jimmy is to employee well-being.
You don't complain about your work.
Right.
You just do your job. Don't report it to Jimmy because Jimmy doesn't care. Jimmy never asked about how I was doing or anything because Jimmy is, quite frankly, a sociopath. So,
in fact, rumors had emerged that Adderall was at one point being handed out in order to get employees to work longer hours. And Trey corroborates this rumor.
There was a time in summer of 2020, it might have been fall, where Adderall was being passed around the company. There were higher up employees that were offering it to other employees just so they could work all night and edit videos all night. So that way they could like stop complaining and stop sleeping.
But okay, there's no way things can get any worse for Jimmy now, right? Yeah, you already see where this is going, don't you? Enter Dawson.
I'm a former MrBeast employee, and today I am alleging that the company rigged videos and did illegal lotteries and sold fake signatures. I would consider that fraud. So this is part 1 into my investigation into MrBeast.
See, none of what I just said was more than a molehill as far as MrBeast was concerned. But Dawson is where this entire situation escalated dramatically. See, Dawson French, going by the handle Dogpack404, is a former MrBeast employee who has released a multi-part expose series heavily inspired by Content Cop. Now, the first entry, titled I Worked for MrBeast, He's a Fraud, was released on July 24th, and it mainly focused on Dawson's personal observations and argument that Jimmy has made much of his fortune in ways that could be considered deceptive at best and, well, fraudulent at worst.
Now, MrBeast intentionally manipulates these children's vulnerable minds for profit.
The second video, titled I Worked for MrBeast, He's a Sociopath, came out on August 7th and featured an interview with another former MrBeast employee, Jake Weddle, who described a pattern of Jimmy prioritizing the company's profits over individual safety and ethics.
If they're faking videos, why couldn't we fake this one?
And the third, MrBeast Secret CEO, was released on August 28th, and alleged that Jimmy had hired dangerous people to work at his company and possibly even went to great lengths to protect them.
Hey, today I'm going to be covering MrBeast Secret CEO James Warren and his involvement in SA and SA cover-ups, like the one including his best friend LaKoya Hill, who also happens to be MrBeast's secret chief operating officer.
And as of this video's release, there's a huge fourth video that's been promised, but Dawson has said that they will not be releasing it until Jimmy responds to the ongoing accusations.
Yeah, I wanted to put all the SA allegations into one video, part 3, final video until Jimmy responds at least. So I have something for when MrBeast responds, if his response is bad.
It's also worth noting that these videos are not monetized. Anyway, now this series is the first attempt to expose MrBeast that I've seen be positively received in the wider YouTube space. Though I want to kind of preface going into the weeds of these videos with something that is partially a disclaimer and partially meant to be constructive feedback for someone who won't see me give it. You see, there are claims in these videos that are deeply concerning while being very well substantiated, and I will go over all of that, but there are quite a few instances in this coverage where Dawson is just kind of speculating, and then that speculation leads to further speculation, which leads to him making an accusation that is either incredibly serious or alternatively just feels pretty trivial while not really contributing to his overall argument to me. Such as when Dawson points out that when a MrBeast video was presented as being shot in real time, it had an intro that was actually recorded prior, which somehow means that the rest of the video's timing can't be trusted.
So knowing that MrBeast likes the results to be close and that offstage producers can sort of influence how a challenge progresses, I want to show one more example. This is a real-time video, meaning that time elapses the same in the video as it does in real life. Now immediately the intro is sped up, and the timer is clearly added in post, and he clearly touches the laser here, but whatever, let's assume that it's all real time.
Additionally, while talking about a MrBeast higher up, Dawson alluded to domestic violence court records linked to that name while openly saying that he wasn't positive it was the same person.
There's allegedly domestic violence charges that were filed against him, and I say allegedly because it turns out there's a lot of people in North Carolina named James Warren who assault their girlfriends, I guess. So I'm still having people look into these cases.
Which led to Dawson later having to clarify that this was a different individual who just so happened to share the same name. Lastly, I feel like he has a really bad habit of burying the lead, where he spends the opening part of his videos on this speculation only to suddenly drop a bombshell in a way where if you're not really paying attention, it just feels equally significant to the surrounding information when it's actually much more important. And I'm not alone in thinking any of this. Even Reddit communities that have overall applauded Dawson's efforts have agreed that he just seems to be out of his depth here. But because there was a lot of really notable investigation work, I'm mostly going to focus on what was more concrete unless I say otherwise. Also, Trey Yates' aforementioned interview actually corroborates a lot of the claims made by both Dawson and Jake, often acting as the only confirmation that isn't anonymous. So, when appropriate, I'll be including any instances of Trey backing up their claims since it adds a lot of legitimacy. Great. Dawson's first video mainly focuses on how Jimmy fakes the authentic nature of the MrBeast brand, a brand that emphasizes how the challenges are never faked, the emotions are always real, and that a MrBeast video is nothing short of an edited down version of reality. This included how, more recently, contestants of the videos have not been randomly selected subscribers, as was claimed in the past, but instead people connected to MrBeast.
I actually recognize a lot of people in this video, including Jimmy's own girlfriend. So yeah, the random subscribers you see in challenges are actually never random. They're almost always local to MrBeast and oftentimes friends and family of MrBeast employees or just the employees themselves. And when they do pull someone from outside of North Carolina, it's usually somebody who's in the industry, who's camera trained, who has built a following.
Though I have to admit that for many of the specific examples that are given, especially with employees, I don't personally see that much of an issue with it if I'm being honest with you. Like, this hasn't been hidden because it couldn't have been for a company this public. It just isn't explicitly disclosed during the videos, but personally, I don't know if that's necessary unless he's specifically claiming otherwise. And also, this is something that Jimmy has been very vocal about recently, about how he no longer wants to work with random individuals and is focusing on recruiting people that he knows are reliable on camera.
So 10 YouTubers, but they're millionaires. They don't need a fucking jet. But I need them because they're funny. And usually when I use random people, they just don't know how to act on camera. Like sometimes I'll have people in the challenge and they just won't say a word. They'll just be like, this is their hand on the jet. They'll be like, for 20 hours, you know, and it's like not good content.
And one of Jimmy's girlfriends did make an appearance in a challenge, but she spoke about this being due to production issues 2 years ago. It's not exactly like it was being kept hidden.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw on your Twitter that you were in the video 100 girls versus 100 boys for $500,000.
Yes, that was an accident. On the day, everybody had to go for COVID tests, and a lot of people came, got their COVID tests, and they tested positive. And the girls somehow ended up with way too little contestants. So I got a call randomly from the studio, and they're like, we need a female. I'm like, well, I am a female.
However, there was one example that, in my opinion, was pretty notable, where Jimmy seems to just give his friend a car while presenting it as a prize anyone could win.
I found public records showing that Mac moved from California to Greenville, North Carolina, where Jimmy is located, back in August 2023, 2 months before he appeared as a contestant. Wait, he's about to be the first one out? That's unlike him.
And though you got out first, I still have a prize for you. Just wait here.
Oh, first person out gets a car, and it just happened to be your friend Mac.
Dawson also makes various claims for the ways that MrBeast videos are, in his view, exaggerated or faked for a good story.
In this video, this wink was added in post. In fact, 58 was actually on the far opposite side of the room from 42, and he just didn't hear him. This whole revenge storyline was added in post.
And I will say, this specific part has been more of a conversation with YouTubers. I mean, there was already Rosanna's experience, but more recently, there was Ludwig. See, Ludwig is a massive streamer who is a frequent collaborator and seemingly a good friend of Jimmy's.
What are you doing on Friday?
Like 2 days from now. I think I had maybe a shoot in the morning. That was
Okay, that's fine. Cancel it. So I'll have a private jet pick you up Thursday night and fly you over here. Okay? I need you for a video.
Hell, Ludwig's most viewed video ever is a literal scrapped MrBeast video.
Hey guys, MrBeast here. I spent over $1 million filming this video, but didn't like how it turned out. So instead of scrapping it, I decided to give it to Ludwig to upload on his channel because he flew to North Carolina to be in the video. Enjoy.
Enjoy!
And even Ludwig started speculating that during the last big MrBeast YouTuber challenge, Jimmy seemed to be colluding with Logan Paul and KSI.
You see, it's 50 YouTubers in the box fighting for $1 million. Only 48 of the YouTubers in this event were on the bus. 2 of them had already arrived early, and they're the first 2 people you see when you open the video. Logan Paul and KSI. But I do think that Logan knew about the challenges, and we'll get to that in a moment. Now, for this first challenge, he knew that it was basketball. I don't know how he knew.
For some reason, everyone just paired up with their closest friends.
Now, KSI immediately picked AJ. AJ didn't even have a say in it. KSI just went up to him and said, we're teammates. Logan went up to Carrie right away and picked him as teammates because, as you can probably expect, it was not a teamwork challenge. It was a 1 versus 1 against the person you were tied up with. And they both picked people who are much smaller in stature, who have a clear disadvantage in Giant Jenga just by being smaller. Bro, it was a cooking challenge! He's teamed with Nick the Giovanni. It's a cooking challenge!
And it just so happens that MrBeast just announced a collaboration between his chocolate bar company and Prime, meaning that during the shoot, Jimmy would have a personal interest in providing Prime with free promotion.
Will it make you feel better if I let you promote Prime on your way out?
Sure. Prime, the fastest growing beverage in history, available at Walmart, Target.
Team Prime, we got this.
Which, in my opinion, only further supports Ludwig's observations. Also, a recent video saw Jimmy surviving in what he claims to be a remote abandoned city.
We just got dropped off in the middle of an abandoned city, and we're gonna spend the next 7 days here. And there goes our only way out. We are now stranded for the next 7 days.
This once beautiful city was bombed and abandoned because of war, which means the only people here are us and our cameraman. At least that we know of.
However, evidence started to emerge that it's more of a public area that Jimmy had sectioned off for this video. But the first bombshell, at least in my opinion, comes roughly 17 minutes in, where Dawson starts talking about MrBeast's live streams and giveaways. Namely, that MrBeast used to host live streams meant to promote his merch with giveaways, but would often encourage his viewers to make purchases in ways that were misleading, such as by overstating the viewer's odds of winning.
We're gonna break neutral. When there was just no way they were ever even close to losing money on this stream.
I don't know who this is, but you just got a pair of AirPods. Oh my gosh, we're not making money.
Guys, we need to stop giving everyone something.
We've just lost like 7
almost everything that someone's bought, we put something in their package. I'm not gonna make money.
Also, Jimmy would frequently say things like, if you donate in the next XYZ minutes, you could win a BC prize for a surge in sales, only to not actually enforce this timeline.
Buy in the next 5 minutes for a chance to win. And then 7 minutes later go, actually, the newest order in 30 seconds is gonna win.
In 5 minutes, we're gonna do the same thing again. We're gonna put $1,000 in a random order. Hey, Daryl, don't we owe someone $1,000?
We do.
Yeah, so, all right, so the newest order in 30 seconds, we are gonna put $1,000 in your package.
Stephen K.
Okay?
Stephen King.
And there is no second giveaway 30 seconds later, like Jimmy said. This is just one very shady giveaway. I counted 13 of these extra shady lotteries where they did not give the prize in the original time frame that they said.
Or Jimmy claiming that a particular live stream would be the last time you could purchase his autograph, which wasn't true.
Also, MrBeast said during the live stream that this is the last time he'd ever sign anything, and that was just a lie.
And Dawson argues that these practices are examples of Jimmy selling a dream to kids that won't come true, much in the same way that casinos often do.
Also, obviously, you have to be 18 to play the lottery. It's gambling. MrBeast isn't just promoting gambling to children here, he's running the casino.
But the most damning of this was 2 specific instances where Jimmy either outright lies or makes empty promises in order to make money. For example, one of the crew members had actually forged Jimmy's autograph on camera in a way that you could argue suggests that this is routine.
So Tyler signs MB, which is MrBeast's signature. Then he covers it, signs his own initials, TC, smirks, looks around, and then quickly slides the shirt away. Could you make it any more obvious? You know, you don't accidentally have someone else's signature as muscle memory, and judging by his body language, he knew he exposed this. Even Tariq notices Tyler slip up and immediately looks into the camera, looks guilty, and then readjusts his body and rubs his hands together.
And yet, Dawson makes a very compelling argument to me. If I were signing my name absentmindedly for hours on end, there's no way that I would accidentally sign someone's name for the first time ever, let alone in a way that perfectly matches their signature. That suggests that this was commonplace, and if this was commonplace, it's hard for me to wrap my head around how much of MrBeast's revenue would be owed to straight up fraud. Marking up the price of your merch with the promise that you're signing it when you never even touch the damn thing is incredibly unethical, even before we take into account that he's doing this to children who idolize the man. Also, MrBeast had at one point collected money from his fans with the promise of letting them store a photo on a NASA rover that would be sent to the moon.
No joke, for $10, I'll put whatever picture you want on the moon. Basically, NASA is putting a rover on the moon, and I managed to convince them to let me buy storage on their moon rover.
However, the mission where this would be fulfilled was canceled in July of 2024, and to my knowledge, no statement has been made by Jimmy in regards to potential refunds or an alternate plan. Dawson also lays out his argument for why the majority of MrBeast's giveaways and lotteries might actually be illegal. Though I'm going to show the explanation from veteran creator Captain Sparkles just because I personally found it a bit easier to follow.
A lottery includes 3 things: chance, prize, and consideration. And at least in the United States, you might be interested to know that unless it's run by the government, this is illegal to do. But wait, you say to yourself, people win money all the time, whether it's in a competition or they bought a cereal box that had the winning thing inside of it. They always have a no purchase necessary method of entry. They have to have that, otherwise it would be an illegal lottery. I did a charity live stream and I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if the people who donate to the charity I'm raising money for could be eligible to win a prize in a giveaway? You can't actually do that. That is an illegal lottery. Even if it is for charity, everyone still has to be eligible with a no purchase necessary to win that prize. During the live stream, he would say, hey, people who order shirts in the next X amount of minutes, I'm gonna throw in a bonus. Now, obviously this means there is a chance, however small it may be, that someone goes, you know what? I really want to win that prize, so I'm going to spend way more money than I should. I'm going to buy the next 50 shirts so that hopefully I'll be the one who wins the prize that's supposed to be given away in the next 10 minutes. And that is what the government is trying to protect people from doing by making lotteries illegal. Now, does this mean that MrBeast conducted illegal lotteries within this live stream? Yes, I think it's a totally innocent pitfall that you could fall into, but it's still something you should absolutely be aware of because of how easy it is to fall into it.
Dawson also revealing that MrBeast wanted to partner with the online loot boxes that caused so much controversy for creators like Jake Paul years ago.
This is fun, man. I'm gonna mystery box more often.
This is fun, man. I'm getting a crazy adrenaline rush. Yes! Not like gambling at all. That's not why people get addicted to gambling, for the rush of it. A perfect activity for an 8-year-old.
Until his manager talked him out of it.
Jimmy was, he wanted to work with that company when he heard about it because there was a lot of money and we wanted to give that money away in a video, and I had to talk him back on it. I was like, listen, we're not promoting gambling. I think people are going to see this negatively. So it was a long conversation that him and I had to have, which eventually we passed on the deal. And then Jake Paul and Rice Gum ended up doing that deal and got a lot of hate for it. So we've sidestepped a few situations.
There was also a MrBeast winner who was given $1 million with the condition that he spend it all within a day.
All right, so you now have 24 hours to spend the $1 million. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's do it. What we're actually gonna do is be responsible and try to set Mark up for his future. Obviously, he's aware $1 million is a lot, but it's not unlimited money. So we're gonna make smart purchases like a house, cars, and do some investing.
But when it came time to plan out this life-changing sum, he claims he was only given an hour with the financial expert.
Y'all gotta remember too, people who buy houses and cars and stuff, they take time. Like, people pick out a house, they usually take months and stuff. So I didn't really have that much time to do all that. The best example I can give you is when we had planned out the house and stuff, I literally had an hour. He had somebody come to my house and we sat down and we planned all this in an hour.
And throughout the video, Dawson also touches upon some of the reasons that he finds much of the basis for the MrBeast brand to be unethical.
So young, impressionable viewers are made to believe that MrBeast is a trusted authority who can give them big rewards. You know, there's a big emphasis at the company of like how to manipulate children, like understanding their psychology and everything.
With particular focus on his chocolate bar brand, Feastables.
For Halloween this year, Feastables is planning on putting $1 million in a chocolate bar. But I swear to God, I said to somebody at the company, I feel like Feastables is 70% a chocolate company and 30% a lottery targeting children. And this higher up person at MrBeast said it was probably closer to the other way around and was laughing about it. Like 70% a lottery, 30% a chocolate company. Everyone knows it's just the call to actions and call to action giveaways especially that drive sales. As a large part of Feastables' marketing campaign was the fact that it's a better for you brand, that it's healthier for you than Hershey's.
I wanted to just make a better for you snack brand because I think a lot of the stuff out there is just terrible for you.
Because obviously so much obesity and disease comes from the stuff we eat.
Now in 2024, MrBeast changed the formula again to where it has mostly the same ingredients as Hershey's and even more sugar and more calories per bar. And this initial ad for Feastables where he calls it healthy is still getting millions of views a month.
Now that video started to make waves immediately upon its release, amassing over 14 million views despite being the first upload to the Dog Pack channel. And in response, Dawson saw some pretty swift retaliation, receiving 2 cease and desist letters from Jimmy, while a higher up from the company, Chucky, responded to several of Dawson's claims while also accusing him of lying because he was on drugs. And in my opinion, Chucky's response showed the issues with Dawson's presentation. The forged autograph and illegal giveaways was more than enough for the argument that Dawson was making, but because he engaged in quite a bit of speculation, often supported by an anonymous message at best, it's easy to pick many of his claims apart. So Chucky was able to make a really long thread where he attempts to discredit Dawson while being able to ignore the most serious parts of the video. But in the face of this resistance, Dawson remained unwavered, responding to Chucky and sharing his argument that Jimmy's environmental efforts have done more to help his brand than, well, the planet. But Jimmy trying to silence Dawson, it started to ruffle some feathers.
He talked about actual, like, fraudulent stuff right there. That is what you should have responded to. If you're not willing to respond to that and instead, send out these alleged cease and desists, that is one of the most terrible looks anybody can have on the situation right now.
See, on YouTube, creators criticize each other all the time, but responding to that with legal action is universally hated by YouTubers, because lawsuits don't have to be right in order to be expensive, so larger YouTubers would be able to bully anyone with less resources into silence. Like when a YouTuber takes legal action against a critic, it usually hurts their career far more than either accepting the criticism or publicly refuting it. We saw this with the frivolous lawsuit against H3.
How did this channel go from getting millions of views to only doing a little better than I am?
by going up against one of the most beloved content creators on this site.
As well as Logan Paul trying to sue CoffeeZilla for an investigation that he had praised multiple times.
So Logan Paul has sued CoffeeZilla for making false statements because he keeps repeating facts that Paul has acknowledged in his own lawsuit against the developers are true. But Logan Paul just doesn't like how CoffeeZilla has characterized these facts. But the bottom line is that Logan Paul filed this lawsuit because he wants to silence his main critic. And that's the very definition of a slap suit.
But as I said, Dawson remained undeterred, which leads us to his second video. And this is where things ramped up by a lot. See, the first was more focused on Jimmy's character in regards to his fans, but the second had much more to do with what it's like to work for Jimmy. See, Dawson decided to interview another former MrBeast employee, Jake Weddle, and at first, Jake talked about the general experience of working with Jimmy, namely how he had seen the company change over time.
I was there from 2019 to 2020, 2021-ish when I came back and did some more. I was there when they were authentic, and then I saw the transition to what I feel like is a company. He's like a TV show now. It went from YouTuber guy with a camera to Amazon.
How Jimmy would become controlling over his employees seeking other opportunities.
He didn't want anyone to get more popular or have more of a way out necessarily. Like, oh, I'm doing my Twitch thing on the side. Don't do that because you could get famous and leave and talk about me negatively. My YouTube on with the whiteboard they gave me. And I was like, all right, yeah, go ahead and scrub that footage. You know, you got that whiteboard. Oh no, either that goes in or this footage is unusable, and then, you know, James Warren came in and erased it, don't put that, hey, we can torture him, don't you dare let him get a plug in there,
And how Jimmy would allegedly not compensate his writers fairly.
So I do my part of the video, and I get a mom van that I could afford, and Jimmy was like, why didn't you get a cooler car? And I can't afford a big flashy new car, because I work at MrBeast. If I was working on a TV show in the 90s, on a show that was a quarter as successful, I could retire today.
But also fire employees in retaliation for them asking for better compensation.
I was talking to this other writer, Mike, it's fucked up, that's how the pay is, and I want you to get paid more, because you deserve to get paid more. I don't have a kid. And he didn't want to rock the boat. He desperately didn't want to rock the boat. You went to that meeting with me. And I said my piece, and he backed me up. I said, I need XYZ or I'm out of here. And they said, bet, and they gave me a severance check the next day. And they gave him a severance check the next day. If I knew he was gonna lose his job too, I wouldn't have done it.
This also mirrors how Trey was let go from the company.
And it was during that call that I was like, Jimmy, I'm not working more than 45 hours anymore per week. I'm not working Saturdays and Sundays anymore. And he paused and he was like taken aback. And he was like, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. How do you say that? Like the average work week for an American is 40 hours a week. How are you gonna say that to me? No one was talking to me, so I knew what was coming. And it was just like, yeah, after that call, that lead called me and he was just like, sorry, we gotta let you go. And I was crushed too.
Jake also touched upon personal issues with Jimmy, such as him making false promises.
I was told at one point that I was gonna be like fourth banana, it was gonna be Jimmy, Chris, Chandler, me, And then that never happened. And I remember talking about that, like, hey, I thought my contract said XYZ. And then I got the severance checks, so, whatever.
As well as making jokes that Jake felt crossed the line.
My dad is in jail. I have friends that make fun of my dad. That's fine, because I know their intent, I know where they're coming from. When Jimmy joked with my dad, and I said that to seem weird, I don't like it, but he says to me, all right, you're going to jail, like your dad. And it's a joke, but when my friends do it, it's fine, and Jimmy just wasn't my friend. He was my boss, and that wasn't cool.
But okay, people having personal issues with Jimmy, especially people in a position to feel scorned or vengeful, that's hardly new at this point, right? But that was only the start. See, one of Jimmy's biggest challenges featured a contestant that would be paid every day that they spent in a room by themselves.
I'm gonna dramatically seal the door. Good luck.
So this is my apartment now, but instead of paying rent, I make $10,000 a day. This is gonna be very easy.
And while the video did receive some criticism for the potential dangers of solitary confinement, overall the video was received quite well, seemingly because Jimmy was able to adequately maneuver the risks in order to make it a positive experience.
I made 340 grand. I'm done. I'm good. We're doing this thing now.
Okay.
Will you marry me?
Yes! But that wasn't the whole story. See, the contestant in the video, Josh, yes, there are a lot of J names today, actually wasn't the first to attempt this challenge. That was actually Jake Weddle, but his attempt had gone so poorly that it was scrapped entirely.
I was unwell. I had editors coming up to me, saying, "You good, bud?" And I was like, "Yeah, why? You're clearly unwell." And he goes, well, because the footage you're sending in is haunting. Because I'm trying to be funny, but I am mentally decaying, so I'm doing bits. Someone said there is a horror cut of a video in this.
But why? What the hell could have possibly happened? Well, Jimmy had actually reached out to Jake about this video after he was let go from the company.
That's why you keep nice publicly. If you're nice in public, hey, Jake was nice in public, let's have him back for something. You know, yeah, sure. So I was hoping they'd call back, you know?
But going into this, there were two huge problems. One, Jake was desperate for the money that this opportunity could bring him. I mean, he was just fired after all.
I grew up poor in North Carolina. I said, excuse me? I'll dance for you if you put that kind of money in my face, sure. But Jimmy's the guy with the money, and if you do what he says, he'll do what you want. You want your student loans paid off? You just be in this cage. And you have power over people. When one person doesn't have resources and the other one does, and they hold it over your head, and you go, of course, yeah, I agreed to it. I needed it, of course.
And two, Jimmy started to enter ethically questionable territory, such as, in Jake's opinion, using their familiarity to push him further than most contestants would be willing to go.
There was an element of, oh, Jake will do what we want because he's in-house. You know, that's one of the reasons why they got me. Jake's, he's an inside guy, so he'll do whatever. We can push him a little extra hard.
This led to Jake enduring inhumane conditions during the shoot, mainly involving elements that looked great on camera but had severe real-life consequences, including sleep deprivation.
A hot tub that's not connected to a filtration system. Give it 3 days, it's gonna stink. And the ice cream machine, let's talk about that for a second. The ice cream machine has two modes. On, and off, reeking of smelly dairy, mildew, so I got to choose which sense was assaulted at a time. So the little things started to build up, you know. It got to a point where they weren't turning the lights off. You know, I asked them, I said, can we have nighttime hours? You know? And they said no, because it would f up the time-lapse shots. The time-lapse of what, me sleeping? Or me not sleeping? I just wanted to turn the lights off. And I'm vocalizing to people, I wish the lights would turn off. And I go up to my friend, my good friend, and I go, they're not turning the lights off. He goes, what? That's a war crime. We're not allowed to do that to terrorists. Oh, good. 24 hours breaking the Geneva Convention, I guess, is what we're doing.
Now, MrBeast will very famously use the specific ways that contestants are struggling in order to entice them with rewards. For example, if someone keeps talking about missing their family,
it is my mom's birthday tomorrow, even though I won't be able to spend the day with her,
Jimmy might let them get an hour of family time in exchange for taking back some of the prize money.
So the offer for day 50 is $20,000 for the both of you to see your families. You're in the other room watching that feed, and they can hear everything we're saying.
What? Hey, I miss you guys. I love you and I miss you.
I'll be back in 10 minutes to hear if you're gonna take the offer.
Or like in Jake's case, Jimmy would offer them additional money in exchange for doing some kind of challenge. And all Jake had to do was run a marathon, which is over 25 miles long, while he was sleep deprived.
People who run marathons train forever, and it's still hard. And I'm running until 3 a.m. I got off the treadmill. Oh, the blisters I had on my feet were you wouldn't believe, just all over, just these big red. I couldn't walk. My muscles were just the lactic acid. I got off the treadmill, and then the people that came in to ice my feet, make sure I was good. And that's when I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm out.
So I just want to hop in here and show some text that Jake sent me after this interview. This is July 29, 2021, a few days after he got out of solitary. I'm not exactly 100%. I feel like mentally I'm still recovering a bit, but back in therapy and my therapist is concerned. Haha, but my legs and joints feel better. I can walk, but my feet are still covered on those blisters and those hurt to walk on. But I was told the best thing to do is stay off my feet and let them heal.
And when it was all said and done, Jake was still expected to provide the perfect photo finish in spite of his condition.
And they didn't let me leave right away either. They wanted to make sure, everything was fine. So I just, slept for a while. They turned the lights off. And they brought in all my friends, to make it. They brought in all the people I liked. And Jimmy.
With Jimmy allegedly feeding him lines.
This is the note I got from the director, from Jimmy, when I'm receiving some cash. He said, Jimmy said, can you say to the camera how thankful you are that now you can pay back your student loans? You know how hard it was to do a take of that and pretend to make it genuine? I don't want to have student loans. I don't want to be in a cage.
Even more, Jake had agreed to the challenge because of Jimmy's pitch, where he implied that Jake would easily win a large sum of money.
The pitch is 100 days in solitary confinement But don't worry, like you only have to last like 30. We have like a video. They're pitching it like at first it's gonna be like a luxury vacation. You're gonna have like a hot tub and an ice cream machine. It's only gonna be bad for you to last like 5 days tops when you have like nothing left. It's gonna be like a breeze for most of it. And by the end of it, after 30 days, you're gonna get $300,000 because it's $10,000 a day.
But ultimately, Jake walked away with a third of that amount.
I did not get the 300K. What I got, he goes, think of it this way. At least you get to keep what you earned, 100,000 some change, you know? You know how much money I spent in taxes in 2021? I spent $44,000 in taxes alone.
It's also worth noting that, according to Trey, this isn't the only time that a video became so dangerous that it had to be scrapped and reshot.
There was I got hunted by an FBI agent video in 2021, and what people don't know is that was the second time that was recorded. Very similar to the Jake Weddle story. The first time that they recorded it, they didn't vet the FBI agent talent properly, and it ended up that guy was a psychopath and like bumped into the car that Ava and Chandler and all the other talent were in and like made them drive off the road and crash.
And throughout this interview, Jake maintains that Jimmy's dedication to being the #1 YouTuber at any cost is what allows for these breaches in responsibility.
I think he just wanted to be the best YouTuber so bad. Jimmy just did what the industry and maybe what this system that we have set up demanded, and he didn't care who got hurt.
If he wants to hang out with you, it's definitely going to be money centric. It's definitely going to be how he can benefit from you.
But then Jake touches upon the Delaware that I had mentioned earlier, saying that Jimmy had actually hired him to not only work at the company, but to act as one of its managers despite Delaware being a registered sex offender.
And they knew that, and they covered up the fact that not only did he work there, but he was like the manager when it all started.
And it turns out that Delaware's alleged victim was on the young side.
From what I hear, I can't confirm or deny, from what I hear, he's on the registry for doing some not great stuff to some underage people.
Which is especially bad when you remember the audience that Jimmy's company has access to. And while Jake anticipates the defense that Jimmy didn't know about this, it just so happens that every time that Delaware would appear in a video, he would do so while wearing a mask.
He'll be in videos. He'll be in thumbnails, he'll be around, and whenever he's wearing a mask. Why would you wear a mask? Why would you conceal your face? It's like, what are you concealing? That you are a registered sex offender?
And Jake the Viking actually confirmed all of this, saying that this was the brother-in-law who got him hired at MrBeast. However, he insists that he, Jimmy, and Jimmy's mother all knew about Delaware's situation and came to the conclusion that he could be trusted. I mentioned Jimmy's mom because multiple former employees have confirmed that until recently, she was the one running MrBeast's HR department.
Yeah. Maybe not have your mom be the HR.
Not being a fucking Nepo company. That would definitely help.
You can't take anything to HR either because Jimmy's mom runs it.
Which I will just say speaks volumes to Jimmy either being severely unethical or remarkably naive in running his business. Typically, if someone has an issue with Jimmy or anyone else at the company, they'd report it to HR. But at MrBeast, they'd have to bring it to Jimmy's mom, who's even more incentivized to protect the company than most HR managers. Jake the Viking also reaffirms his belief that Delaware was innocent and claims that the charges in question are scheduled to be dropped in the coming months. Essentially, Jake the Viking's explanation for Delaware mirrors Drake Bell's explanation for pleading guilty to child endangerment, where if you take them at their word, had they not taken the plea and let the case go to court, they would face a much harsher punishment should they be found guilty, meaning that they pled guilty despite being innocent. Which I will acknowledge, it's hard to know on an individual basis if someone's telling the truth when they make this kind of claim, but this is a very common criticism about the way that the justice system is set up in the US, where innocent people are basically threatened into taking a guilty plea in order to avoid jail time.
This sadly played out in a case that got notoriety of Khalif Browder. Bail was set on him for $3,000, an amount his family could not make, and he would not take any plea offer because he was innocent. And he waited in jail for 3 years before a prosecutor finally looked at the case and realized that they had problems with their witness and dismissed the case. And unfortunately, during those 3 years, Mr. Browder withstood unimaginable physical and emotional abuse, and 2 years after he was released, committed suicide.
Again, that's not me commenting on any particular case, it's just worth noting that yes, that is a problem that does exist. But of course, anyone who pleads guilty to that kind of crime would obviously use that defense. Though in his video, Dawson claims that MrBeast is actively trying to cover up Delaware's history, but that's based on an anonymous source.
Also, apparently before this phone conversation got recorded, the person on the other end of the line said that the MrBeast team was actually trying to expunge Delaware's record off the registry.
Though according to Jake the Viking, who, just a reminder, hates Jimmy, Delaware was actually the one who decided to wear a mask because of his history. That was not at Jimmy's request, which I do think is important when one of the big questions surrounding Delaware is if Jimmy was trying to hide this. Now, once this video released, things really started to amp up for Jimmy. I mean, Dawson's first video wasn't exactly great for him, but it also wasn't damning. The things that were concrete could largely be chalked up to incompetence. I mean, the giveaway that Jimmy was doing were common on YouTube. He didn't exactly pioneer the format.
As long as people actually received what they were promised, again, it doesn't strike me as a malicious thing to do. It seems more like an oversight and not realizing that you're not allowed to do it. So again, I think it's a totally innocent pitfall that you could fall into, but it's still something you should absolutely be aware of because of how easy it is to fall into it.
And the forged hoodies are a bad look, but maybe Jimmy truly didn't realize why that would be so unethical.
Maybe they could say it's the brand's signature, even though it's clearly implied that this is Jimmy's signature, which was established during the last live stream.
And for the most part, the rest of that video relied on either Dawson's opinions or an anonymous source, which is always going to be met with skepticism. But this was torture. And at this point, multiple creators associated with Jimmy started to speak out, such as Ludwig stating that his future support of Jimmy would hinge on how he responds to this.
Feastables, his chocolate bar company, was supposed to be one of the big sponsors for streamer games. He allowed me to pull out. So I'm now losing 100K by not defending him, right? Like, this event's going to lose money. And if you're wondering how I feel about it, I'll tell you right now. I think Jimmy needs to make a reply. Like, he technically doesn't need to. He uploaded a YouTube video and it got 120 million views, and he could probably continue to upload videos without ever replying and continue to get hundreds of millions of views. But I won't be able to support him. I won't support him in any way, shape, or form if that's what he does, because I think he needs to reply specifically to why he hired a sex offender. Apologize to Jake Weddle. Like, how did that situation end up as it was? Everyone who bought a forged MrBeast hoodie gotta get their money back. Everyone who participated in an illegal lottery needs to have right done by them. And finally, I also need to know about, like, Beast Games. Like, what is going on there? And that still doesn't account for him having to reply for things that haven't yet come out.
And Jaden Animations had recently posted a video about her winning one of Jimmy's challenges.
So yeah, I won $1 million to give away to my subscribers. I decided to put it towards paying for as many people's art degrees as possible.
But she distanced herself in the description, clarifying that she was only releasing the video because production began long before the controversy emerged. And publicly, Jimmy has just kind of continued as normal, releasing videos as if nothing was wrong. In fact, Jimmy even had the time to participate in a workout video with Chris Hemsworth, which was just a great look.
I'm Chris Hemsworth, and today we're working out.
And I'm MrBeast, and I'm the biggest YouTuber on the planet. I'm going to teach Chris how to do it.
In fact, all we had really gotten was a mild update from Ludwig.
I called him and I said two things. One, when are you going to reply? And he echoed what was said in the Dogpack video, which is when everything comes out, he's going to make one reply as opposed to a reply after every single video. So we'll see when that happens.
Though Jake Weddle has made several more comments of his own since the interview. This includes revealing that Jimmy had reached out to him in response to the interview and offered to pay the remaining $190,000 that he had expected to earn from the challenge, of which Jake accepted $50,000 on the condition that he can continue to speak freely about his experiences.
That's going to cover all my debts, some medical bills that I have taxes on the back burner from last year because I'm freelance, and that'll get me back to zero. And I get to keep saying whatever the hell I want. Yeah, great. Bank info still the same?
Jake also talks about the apology that Jimmy offers him both in text and over the phone.
I've seen Jimmy speak at regular hangouts. I've seen Jimmy speak on camera, behind the camera. When I tell you, this is the most human I've ever heard Jimmy speak. So take that as you will.
Jake also touches upon some of the interactions he had with other employees while working there.
When we were doing that Grandfather Mountain video. I was the director on that video. And then everybody else had to stay behind and clean up, which left Jake the Viking to do that. And Viking said, "F that, let's just throw all of this over the side of the mountain." You know, like littering in a national park.
But while the conversations around these controversies were ramping up, Dawson and Jimmy found themselves in somewhat of an odd game of chicken. Because while Jimmy apparently wanted to wait until everything comes out in order to make one response, Dawson has repeatedly said that he is holding off on going forward with some of his bigger claims until Jimmy breaks his silence.
I'm working on putting together so I have something for when MrBeast responds. If his response is bad, then I can sort of point out, hey, he lied here and deflected and straw man argument or whatever, as well as like dropping new allegations and doing it in an opportune way so that they get the most eyeballs.
And that particular decision has had a bit of a mixed reaction towards both sides for drawing things out. But either way, Dawson eventually released a third video amidst Jimmy's continued silence. However, he clarifies that this is not the part 3 that he's been teasing as the final nail in the coffin. Instead, it acts as more of a part 2.5 that touches upon some of the higher-ups that have been hired and possibly even protected by Jimmy despite their misconduct. This includes one James Warren, who Dawson referred to as the secret CEO of Jimmy's company.
Just a quick profile on James Warren. He's Jimmy's cousin and secret CEO, and I say secret because, you know, they're not very open about that fact. Like, he doesn't post about it on social media. It wasn't ever attached to his LinkedIn. He's never featured or really referenced anywhere.
And that according to Dawson, Warren had previously been involved in business practices that were so unethical that he never should have been considered for a position at MrBeast.
Before working at MrBeast, James Warren was involved in a literal fraud. In fact, he's actually mentioned in the court transcripts that James Warren was the former COO of acquisitions of a real estate investment firm called Greenstone Ventures LLC, which is one of the businesses listed in this indictment of his former business partner, Joshua Hutchins, who was sentenced to 10 years in prison for running a real estate Ponzi scheme. I think the COO of acquisitions would know and be sort of responsible for properties not being properly acquired through the court system. But again, that's my opinion, that's all allegedly.
And according to these whistleblowers, Warren brought his unethical practices right to MrBeast.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think he's a textbook abuser. I think if you talk to any employees and ask them about James Warren, like, they'll give you stories of him just verbally abusing or berating, screaming at people in the office.
James Warren, I think he's always been the CEO of MrBeast.
To your knowledge, did you know about him offering substances to people to stay and work longer?
Yep. Adderall. James Warren had to be pulled out of the company story for like a week, and then the next week he was right back in.
James Warren, also allegedly an ex-drug addict. I've heard that he offered cocaine and hookers to editors to stay late.
But there's a specific part of Dawson's coverage of Warren that caused him to get quite a bit of backlash. See, Dawson shared that in North Carolina, James Warren was charged with DV.
I've heard him referred to as a psychopath who screams at people and hits his girlfriends. There's allegedly domestic violence charges that were filed against him.
Or, well, a James Warren. You see, Dawson straight up admits that he is not positive that that's the same person because it's apparently a pretty common name.
And I say allegedly because it turns out there's a lot of people in North Carolina named James Warren who assault their girlfriends, I guess. So I'm still having people look into these cases.
And he later had to clarify on Twitter that this was not the same James Warren. And personally, I would argue that this is another example of Dawson burying the lead, because the second higher up that he covers, LaKoya Hill, is where things get far more questionable. And by the way, I'm not pointing out these critiques to discredit Dawson. In fact, it's quite the opposite, because there are some genuinely important things that he's uncovered, so I don't want some spotty judgment calls to distract from what does matter here. Anyway. Now, Dawson goes on to describe LaKoya's history at the company, largely sourcing anonymous messages that he claims are from MrBeast employees, both past and present. According to Dawson, LaKoya was brought into the company as a producer, having previously worked in adult entertainment.
Now, I'm all for personal freedoms. I believe adults should be able to do whatever they want. However, I question what qualified the sort of go-go dance drag daddy of San Francisco for a job producing YouTube content for children. You know, it'd also be weird if MrBeast hired Johnny Sins as the janitor.
And this decision was largely thanks to his friendship with James Warren.
Now, on to his alleged best friend, LaKoya Hill. They both went to UNC Chapel Hill together, and they both, after graduating, got into real estate.
Dawson then claims that LaKoya harassed and assaulted his assistant while working at the company, and backs this up with some of the aforementioned messages.
In late 2021, he was allegedly fired for sexually assaulting his assistant. There were reports of him making the assistant sleep in the same room/bed with him on trips, touching him inappropriately, and dangling his job in front of him.
So of course, LaKoya was fired for this misconduct. Kind of.
And I put fired in quotation marks because he was actually quietly moved to the dubbing company, which was Unilingo at the time. Here is proof that he used the LaKoya at unilingo.tv email, links back to him.
Yeah, Jimmy formed a partnership with the dubbing company Unilingo in 2022, and one of his conditions for this partnership was allegedly that they hired LaKoya.
Which I heard, MrBeast or James Warren forced Unilingo to hire LaKoya as sort of part of their partnership without, sending them the report on his alleged sexual misconduct at the company.
And Dawson actually released a voice memo of James Warren seeming to pressure Unilingo to give LaKoya a large bonus for his contributions to the MrBeast channel.
I need a favor. Sue cannot process this bonus through Beast. I need a solid. Can you please process a 28K bonus for LaKoya? Let me know. Bye.
But fast forward to today. Jimmy had actually started his own dubbing company, Creator Global, that acts as a direct competitor to Unilingo. And Dawson found a LinkedIn profile for LaKoya Hill, who lists his current title as being the COO of Creator Global.
And then MrBeast launched Creator Global, where LaKoya Hill is currently listed as the president. So that's LaKoya Hill. And that's just what I can put on the record. I will say that if MrBeast tries to deny this, more evidence will be brought to light, and more people will definitely come out defending me, saying, hey, this is true, these allegations are true. This is all true.
Dawson also claims that LaKoya has done work directly at the MrBeast company after he was let go for his misconduct.
He was actually brought back to MrBeast in 2023 after sexually assaulting his assistant prior, and promoted to Chief Financial Officer, which is how I personally was introduced to him. Here's some evidence from the internal Slack channel at MrBeast showing LaKoya Hill acting in some COO capacity, saying there's news reporters outside, do not engage with them. This was shortly after the Time magazine article came out.
Which, if all of that is true, then that is a bad look that Jimmy went to such great lengths to avoid severing ties with LaKoya.
And then they used LaKoya to try to steal Unilingo's business, poach their employees, take their clients, and then MrBeast launched Creator Global. Dude, this is like the 3-cup game where you gotta keep track of the pets and racists as MrBeast just moves them between companies.
Dawson also claims to have more concrete evidence of these claims that he's saving for if MrBeast tries to deny any of this. Now, while some of the evidence that Dawson provides in regards to LaKoya is less substantial than his previous major claims, I don't think that's something to hold against him in this particular case. Because one, he claims to have personally met LaKoya after he was brought back to the company.
He was actually brought back to MrBeast in 2023 after assaulting his assistant prior, and promoted to Chief Financial Officer, which is how I personally was introduced to him.
And two, the claims that he does base on more vague sources are so specific that it would only be entirely wrong if Dawson is outright fabricating things, which would not only be incredibly foolish of him to do, but in my opinion, that kind of behavior doesn't align with the mistakes in Dawson's coverage that I've previously made note of. Anyway, Dawson then lays out his argument for Jimmy fostering a company culture of misogyny. This is partially based on more anonymous employee testimony.
She says, on my very first day, I was told to avoid being alone in a room with certain people in positions of power. At least once a week, I was subjugated to inappropriate questions and conversations. The minute any woman leaves a room, they would talk about if/how they would f her. I've heard men comment on female contestants' bodies many times. Not everyone behaves this way, but no one openly speaks out against it in fear of losing their job. If you complain about any of this, you'll be shamed for being too sensitive or just ignored. You can't take anything to HR either because Jimmy's mom runs it.
Statements from Jimmy's ex-girlfriend.
She says, how he treats other women will ultimately be how he treats you.
Questionable moments of Jimmy talking about his interactions with women.
For us now, an idea of a date is just to take an IQ test and then study and see if we can get a higher. What do you do? And then she was like, I'm an author. And I was like, yeah, good. She has a hobby.
The testimonies of multiple women who had participated in his productions.
That when she and a group of contestants who were menstruating during the event had asked the production staff about getting their underwear more quickly, she had been told that it was not a medical emergency.
MrBeast withheld my birth control. A lot of people laughed at me in my MrBeast video being like, that's the medication you needed, birth control? I have ovarian cysts. You can't just stop taking birth control. You can't just stop taking hormonal medication out of the blue, out of nowhere.
And some clips of Jimmy talking to the camera camera in some of his older videos. Though with these, it's worth noting that the quotes were provided with no context or source, so it's impossible to tell if these are moments where Jimmy is speaking ironically, is making a bad attempt at a joke, or if he's being sincere.
Well, women are stupid because they're inferior to men. You'll never actually respect a woman, but just act like you respect them.
Though Dawson also points out that a company email from Jimmy was leaked to the public where Jeff Hausenbolt is named as a new hire meant to help the company culture move in the right direction. Problem is, Jeff apparently has a history of doing the opposite.
Here's New York Post. Nasty executives shaped macho culture at SoftBank Vision Fund. And here's Bloomberg Business Week. SoftBank Vision Fund employees depict a culture of recklessness. It has also been described as an environment of sycophancy and harassment. So seemingly all the problems that people have with MrBeast's internal culture.
So okay, that was a lot. But does any of it actually matter? I mean, with many cancellations, people will immediately point to the creator being too big to fall through simple criticisms. So surely that would apply to the biggest YouTuber ever. And not for nothing, there's actually precedent here. PewDiePie, back when he was #1, faced wave after wave of controversy, and yet he maintained his position at the top for quite a while. I mean, just looking at the numbers, MrBeast's channel seems to have done a nosedive following these revelations, but that's in comparison to a month where Jimmy released arguably YouTube's largest collaboration ever. And since, his uploads have been relatively smaller in scale and have done similarly to comparable videos. Though within those newer uploads, there are discrepancies on how they've been received, with certain extensions listing the videos as being tremendously disliked, but those extensions are often making predictions based on user data, so it's not a one-to-one. So Jimmy released what he claims is the actual thumbs up ratio for one of these uploads, but that has universally been dismissed as being forged. But let's talk for a second about if Jimmy's even going to respond. So the entire time that I've been working on this video, I have done so under the assumption that I would have to kind of on the fly integrate whatever response Jimmy makes into this video, right? Which that's fine, I've done it before, but he still hasn't responded at all. In terms of just a response from Jimmy, there has been so much and yet so little that has happened. Okay, to really put this into perspective, I am recording this, what you see, on September 27th, and the video is scheduled to go out in the next 48 hours, right? Okay, Dogpack's first video was released on July 24th, and Dawson's second video, where he had accused Jimmy of hiring someone who had pled guilty to inappropriate contact with a minor in a company that primarily targets minors, that video came out on August 7th. Okay? I started writing this video on August 26th, assuming I'd have to incorporate Jimmy's response, right? I filmed the rest of this video on September 10th. And here we are, September 27th, and Jimmy has not publicly said a single word about anything. And every other day, more accusations about the Beast games are coming out. Every other day, more and more things are being resurfaced, and yet he has not said a word. But what makes this so much worse is the fact that Jimmy, Logan Paul, and KSI, they announced that they were doing their own spin on Lunchables, right? Prime and Feastables. And that announcement got a lot of pushback from people, right? Especially creators. People just didn't like the product. It seemed like it was soulless. It seemed like an easy cash grab. And it was being marketed as the healthier alternative to Lunchables when it's not healthy food, right? So KSI has had somewhat of a mental breakdown and responded to one YouTuber's tweet about this half a dozen times and made a video about it.
He started it! I just released the product! This product came at me! Am I not allowed to respond? Oh, you kidding?
And, Logan had a similar response.
It's just a group of haters.
And so other people, oh, he got ratio, Bro, social media is not real life. That isn't real life. I'll tell you what real life is. When you can make 15,000 people boo you because you do this.
But okay, fine, that's what we expect from them. They're not exactly people who care about their image too much. But Jimmy responded to this criticism within a day. I'm not joking. And the fact that he responded to this in a day, in my opinion, is it's the one thing that makes him look worse in my eyes than everything else. Which sounds dumb considering how serious the accusations are, but you are accused of associating with and even protecting multiple people with histories of being sexually violent, and you don't respond to that over the course of basically 2 months at this point. But someone says your product sucks and you can't get out a response fast enough. When the main part of this conversation is that, oh, it looks like Jimmy only cares about money, and yet he's so much faster to respond to people dunking on his product. You can't make that up. And to be clear, he hasn't even like made a statement about having to prepare a statement. Like, he has said nothing about this. And the funny thing is, like, even more happened with him not making a statement, because his girlfriend had come out and said like, oh, half of the things he's being accused of aren't even true. I wouldn't be with him if they were. But the problem with that statement is that it confirms that the other half of the accusations are true. And the accusations against him are so serious that even if a tenth of them are true, then that's a problem. So what exactly do I think he's doing? Well, I think it all revolves around that game of chicken he's playing with Dawson that I mentioned earlier. Because Jimmy has said, at least to Ludwig, that he's not going to respond until Dawson releases all of his accusations. However, Dawson has stated outright that he will not make certain accusations until Jimmy responds to what he has already put out. So I think Jimmy's plan is to go on like nothing happened, or maybe try to handle this like behind the scenes, because he's been uploading like nothing happened. And here's the thing, every time he does, like every video he gets to put up, he is learning a lot about how much this is affecting him and how much the effects are going away over time. So let's say he doesn't respond for 6 more months, right? At the end of those 6 months, he could do one of two things. One, he could come to the conclusion that he doesn't have to respond and just move on. But if in 6 months he does reply, I think it's going to be hiding behind the excuse that he was waiting for Dogpack to release his final video, even though he knows that Dawson doesn't intend to do that now. Like, I could 100% see Jimmy saying like, oh, I made it clear I wasn't responding until Dawson was done making his accusation, so it's not my fault that he was like holding them to his chest and extending this for drama. Like, I just wanted to make this simple, you know? Which, like, admittedly, I'm speculating, right? Like, this is speculation. But I was able to make a 90+ minute analysis about these accusations by myself before he can say a sentence on it, with an entire team, unlimited resources, and a 1-month head start. But okay, with that said, let's just go back to me talking about like the worst case scenario here for Jimmy. Let's say this is where the situation ends, that neither Jimmy nor Dawson comment on this again. Would this be the end of MrBeast as we've known him? Well, kind of. See, if we're talking purely about Jimmy's ability to remain a successful YouTuber, then yeah, no, he'll be fine. But what I think makes this more interesting is when you remember that it's Jimmy. See, most people that dream of being YouTubers, that's where it ends. They just want to make a decent living from making videos. But that isn't really Jimmy's goal. He specifically wants to be the best. I guess instead of asking how this affects the average YouTuber, it makes more sense to ask how this would affect that goal. Because I actually think it would be pretty significant. Because the past decade of YouTube has seen it slowly transition from a creator-driven platform to one largely run by corporations. I mean, hell, one of the last true movements where the YouTube community got together was to prevent a corporation from beating out a homegrown creator for the #1 spot. And similarly, it was seen as a big deal when MrBeast was able to reclaim that title in the name of individual creators. But even then, it's been made clear that the top spot is never going to be held by a true solo creator again. It requires the work of a corporate-level entity. And while it's certainly possible to be a YouTuber who finds success ethically, at a certain point, how long can they keep that up when setting their sights at being #1? Because out of all the YouTubers to hold that title, Jimmy is the only one that seemed to want it from the start. So it was inevitable that Jimmy's production would turn into one that's too large for him to truly manage on his own. So before even combing through the specifics of this, I'm not surprised that Jimmy was probably very in over his head once this translated from running a YouTube channel to running a business. And I think that along the way, yes, Jimmy adopted somewhat of an any means necessary mindset. And I talk about this a lot, but the moment that media is accessible to kids, let alone targeted at them, ethics are going to get messy real fast. So that mindset is going to quickly become a problem. And one of the best examples of this is Logan Paul, a frequent collaborator that Jimmy is often criticized for having, who also seems to be, in my opinion, somewhat of a hero for Jimmy. And for a lot of the missteps that Jimmy made on his way up, honestly, they feel really familiar as someone who has covered Logan's unethical behavior in the past, like overstating how much of a financial hit you're taking in order to elicit more merch sales.
Because as you guys know, YouTube cut my AdSense in half. Thanks YouTube, love ya. So I am gonna need you guys to buy all my merch, Maverick merch, of course, so I don't lose my house.
You do realize every time you give away an Xbox than $1,000, you don't make money. I'm like, Oh, I know, we're not gonna make money. What are we doing, guys? We're gonna check after the stream and it's gonna be like, oh no. What a waste. Yeah, I know. We're gonna break neutral.
Or for collecting money to fund a grand project that they go silent on until people forget about it.
The core mechanic of CryptoZoo, that you can make money with these stupid animals, didn't even work on launch day. And still, to this day, a year later, still does not work, is what the investors are saying. Which, this is just crazy. People spent millions of dollars on these eggs.
No joke, for $10, I'll put whatever picture you want on the moon.
Or Jimmy wanting to work with the online loot box company that was largely spearheaded by Logan's brother.
This box is $15 a time to try, but you can potentially win like iPads and iPhones and stuff. So this is like a good valued one, I feel like, because it's like 15 and then you can get iPhone. So it's like that's dope.
Right. Jimmy was he wanted to work with that company when he heard about it because it was a lot of money and we wanted to give that money away in a video, and I had to talk him back on it. I was like, listen, we're not promoting gambling.
Or selling a food product where you are overstating the health benefits in order to market yourself as the better version of an established brand.
Sure, it has a ton of electrolytes, but none of them are the ones that you need to be replacing. Prime has given you a ton of potassium. This thing is practically a banana, but you don't really need potassium in the middle of strenuous exercise.
Now in 2024, MrBeast changed the formula again to where it has mostly the same ingredients as Hershey's and even more sugar and more calories per bar. And this initial ad for Feastables where he calls it healthy is still getting millions of views a month.
And once Jimmy's channel was officially a company, it seems like he started taking cues from another hero of his, Elon Musk, such as quite literally hiring the same lawyer as him to handle legal actions against Dawson, or by starting a so-called company town, where he provides his employees with a neighborhood just for them, which is a practice often criticized because it can grant a company greater control over their employees, such as the literal roof over their head.
We think that this Big Brother-like control that's associated with company towns is un-American.
Also, Jimmy setting loss of sleep as an expectation for his employees is something Musk was criticized for during his Twitter takeover. Now, I don't make these comparisons to specifically put Jimmy on the level of Logan Paul or Elon Musk, but I do think that Jimmy is so inspired by the success of these figures that he may have adopted their affinity for making ethics a secondary concern. That's part of why I think that this damage to his reputation could genuinely be the end of MrBeast as we've known him. Because MrBeast is the only person that can get the 50 largest YouTubers in a room together for a challenge. He is especially the only one that can pull that off while making sure everyone stays on their best behavior, despite a lot of these people not liking each other. But part of what made Jimmy able to do what he does is by perfectly towing the line of being likable enough that people of all backgrounds can feel comfortable supporting him. But all of the calculations that a YouTuber does before associating with another, that's not just based on personal values. There is also the very real component of how those associations can affect their image or brand, for better or for worse. And while yeah, some of these mistakes are easy for creators to overlook, man, others are just not. Like the idea that Jimmy may have gone to such incredible lengths to protect someone who is let go from the company after being accused of SA. That's not a great look. Nor is hiring someone who at the time was charged for inappropriate contact with a minor. I mean, even if Jake the Viking was right and Jimmy and his mother were sure of Delaware's innocence, I'm sorry, but that is not your call to make, my guy. When you are exposing someone to your audience of millions of children, it is insane to trust your gut over the judgment of the state. And the more time that goes by, the less likely it seems that creators will be willing to stand by Jimmy after this, at least if Ludwig's anything to go by. And he didn't exactly help himself by sending out those cease and desists. Like, I really do think that these days, for an individual to claim the #1 spot on YouTube, it's not just enough for them to somewhat embrace the structure of a corporation. I think they still need a strong backing from other YouTubers. I mean, everyone wants to see the top spot be held by one of the community's own, but I also don't think creators want to risk going back to when the term YouTuber was being defined by news stories about PewDiePie and Logan Paul. And the last thing that'll determine if Jimmy can bounce back is, well, his audience. Look, I've often said that a creator being truly canceled or not relies on the creator betraying what their audience expects from them. Hence why creators known for being awful end up getting away with so much. As long as their viewers expect that behavior, it won't stop them from watching. But for the things coming out against Jimmy, they directly go against the brand he's worked so hard to build up. His content all being authentic is now a lie. Him prioritizing ethical production is now a lie. His insistence that he has never put content over safety is now a lie. Jimmy has long since been on such a pedestal that these controversies could end up costing him significantly. So in summary, I think that the worst case scenario here is that Jimmy goes from being incredibly wealthy to incredibly wealthy but with a slightly bruised ego. So in other words, we did it, guys. We sure showed him. I mean, this is such great evidence that the system always works, right? Yeah.